Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of RTV Live. And we're going to talk about attention pollution. Attention pollution. Wow, it's kind of an interesting thought, isn't it? So, wait a minute. Isn't that what's happening to you all day long? Isn't that what's happening when you're with others all day long? That they're stopping to get on their phone, they're stopping for this, that, or the next thing. Here's the thing. If you're watching with us live, if you're doing this later on the recording, this will be frustrating, so don't do it. But if you're watching live, here's what I want you to do. I want you to tap the screen once if you're having a really productive day. Just tap the screen if you're having a productive day. Because if that's true for you, it's true for me as well. There, we got some hands. That's good. So here's the thing. I'm having a super productive day. I won't go through all the things that I've done, but I've done some writing. I've done an interview that's going to be in the Globe and Mail, the largest newspaper in Canada, a little later, like in February. I did a podcast. It's going to be on in another week. That'll reach 100 and some thousand folks. I'm doing this with you. I've prepared 2 client pieces as well, and had a number of meetings and conversations with my team. So I've had a very productive day. Now, if you've not had a very productive day, and I have a lot of those too, I can tell you that there's a reason, or one of the reasons why that's the case. And I'll get back to that in a second. The first thing I want to say is if you're on with me live and you have a question, you can send a message or make a comment at any time. You can see that on your screen. But if you have a question, if you put a little slash and a Q before it, then it'll show up over here, and hopefully my eyes are good enough that I can read the question. I really would love this to be interactive as well. So feel free to ask a question anytime, slash and a Q. Here's the thing. When I was a kid, I remember the commercials with the Native American guy paddling the canoe and having tears because he's seeing pollution. And those public service announcements were designed to get us to be aware of pollution in our rivers and on our roads and all that sort of normal pollution. And the public service announcement was meant to get our awareness up of it. We became more aware of it once we noticed it. Once words were given to it, we started to notice it. It's easy for us to notice a spill in the water. It's easy for us to notice dirty air. And yet I think there's another kind of pollution that perhaps you don't think about. Perhaps you're not as aware of. Perhaps because maybe there's not been words given to it. Now, if you're with me for more than the first time, you'll know that I do these to go into more depth on the news, on the post that I wrote on my blog, in this case yesterday, called Is Your Attention Polluted? Same thing as what I'm calling this here. So my point is this. What I said in the article, and I'll say it again now, is when I first made a note that I wanted to write about attention pollution, I thought that I had read it somewhere. I thought I would quickly be able to go back to find where I'd read it. I couldn't find it. I wish now that I had made more of a note so I could capture it. But I can't find in Google or anything any other note of this word. So maybe at the end of the day, I thought of the word or the phrase myself, attention pollution. If I'm not first, I'm happy to give credit to whoever it is. Otherwise, I'm happy to take credit because I believe it's real pollution. And so I want you to consider this to be your public service announcement. Our public service announcement. We got someone who's having their first day on Blab, and we want to welcome them to be here. This is our public service announcement. I'm calling out attention pollution as a real thing. So just like us thinking about, if you're old enough to remember the Native American guy and his tears coming down out of his eyes, that's what we want to do. Do I see a relationship, Chris, to the idea of mindfulness? Let me get to that in a minute, because the short answer is yes, but you want to know what I see the connection as. So let me get there. So attention pollution to me is that our attention, which is extremely valuable, right, is being polluted by a whole number of things. Well, what's it being polluted by? Well, first of all, let me give you a definition of pollution, if I can read my handwriting. The presence of or introduction into the environment of a substance or thing that has harmful or poisonous effects? I believe there's a whole bunch of things that get introduced into our environment that are a harmful or poisonous effect. And I'm going to give you a list. I'm going to give you a list that I wrote on my blog post. And they include other people, phone calls, the radio, the latest or your favorite playlist, the television or Netflix or Hulu or your DVR or YouTube, the latest news story or catastrophic event, the political news cycle, I'm adding that one, email, text messages, the cell phone in general, the beeps, buzzes, and notifications of all your devices, social media, pick 'em, right on down I don't really trust someone has to read from the paper. I apologize for that. I just wanted to get my whole list. So here's the thing. There are things that have polluted our attention for as long as we've been human. But the list is getting longer and longer. The list is getting longer and longer. And we could probably sum it up with this one little device as being one of the major culprits. And it's important. It's important that we work on being more clear, more present, and not letting this stuff get in our way. Okay? Yeah, and you're right. We could make that list as long as we want. I just wanted to get a few of the things I had on my list. When I made the initial list, I was trying to think about it sort of historically, that these things happened, and the further we get, the more recent they became. There's no question. It's a whole lot of things that can pollute it. And if we could even keep it down to just this one thing, and we could even keep this down. Did you make the list on your phone? I did not. We could make it down to this one thing, and we can even just call it about texting. If you go to any public place, you see people with each other. You go to restaurants, you see people with each other, and not being present with each other because they're checking their phones. The news that I read last night read that the average person checks their smartphone every 10 minutes. Attention pollution. That something like 60+% of people who are of a younger age sleep with their phone nearby. We have to think about how we can get more present with whatever work it is that we're doing. You see, here's the thing. I opened this by talking about my own productivity today, and in the course of this day, I haven't been checking this. The ringer's even down. So we've got to figure out ways to make this less important, or to put it in a time that we can use it more effectively. Here's the thing. Yes, I am holding my phone, but I am not using it as a distraction. I appreciate the feedback. Here's the thing. See, screen's black, not using it at all. Using it as a prop, not as a way to hopefully not to divert my attention. Here's the thing. Most of us think that we can multitask, and that, hey, I can be doing this and be in this other conversation. Hey, I can be checking my email while I'm on the conference call. The reality is, and the research tells us, that the best we can possibly get at doing two things at nearly the same time is about 70% of quality of each. In fact, research says that we can't truly multitask, but rather we switch back and forth fast enough that we think we're doing two things simultaneously when that's not the case at all. So if the two things you're trying to do are good enough to be doing at 70%, then that may be okay. But I would say there's a lot of time at work when you really ought to be more focused on one thing and not switching back and forth. I think we have attention pollution. I think we all have it. I'm encouraging you to think about how can I reduce its impact on us. And I'll say a little bit more about that, but I want to answer Chris's question now that I see that he's back. Do you see a relationship to the idea of mindfulness? And I think it is. I think that, in my mind anyway, being mindful is about being intentional, and being intentional is about being focused on what is important right now. The word I like to use, Chris, is present. Being present. We could have a whole conversation about ADD and my opinions about all of that. And yes, there's something real there, but the reality is that we all can work on being more present, being more mindful, being more intentional about what's most important for us right now. And I'm saying that most of the time, what's most important to us right now is not this, is not the television, is is not the email, but it's the task at hand. Whether that task is the conversation with our family at dinner, or whether that task is the project that we're working on, rather than being immediately and constantly being dinged back to something else. That's the pollution that I think is rampant. That's the pollution that I am encouraging you to think about ridding or reducing their impacts in your life. That's why I did this public service announcement, if you will, to help you become more aware of it so that you can, so that's right, so you're not doing things automatically, so you're doing things intentionally. And when we have dings and buzzers and beeps and things, our mind moves there, even if we don't pick up the phone, even if we don't go to the email. So I'm encouraging you to think about really how to manage the information and the distractions around you so you are more mindful, more intentional, more focused, and that's key. How do we become more present? How do we become more present? Yes, and I have read Mr. Eckert's totally and agree with a lot of what he has to say. I'm just suggesting to all of you that the challenge for us is to be more clear, more intentional about it. When we do that, I think you'll have better results. So I wish you great success in doing that. I hope that what you'll do is create some new intentions, which is to be a little more reflective, like hopefully what this has done, like to be a little more, spend a little more time actually thinking with the devices off, with the sounds off, so that you can be clear about what it is that you want to accomplish. When you do those things, you'll have more of those productive days and you'll have more success. You'll probably have less frustration and less stress and get more done. I wish all those things for you. I'm glad that you came. Thanks so much for your interaction. I wish you great success as you move forward, and I hope that you find ways to reduce the amount of pollution that you have around your attention. Thanks so much, everybody, for being here. Have a great day.